He hasn't moved in 187 days. Not for food, not for noise. Not even when the door slams shut and echoes down the narrow concrete hall like a memory that refuses to leave. And if you ask the staff at the shelter, they will tell you the same thing in lowered voices. As if speaking too loud might break whatever fragile silence he's holding together, they will tell you that some dogs bark, some whine, some pace in restless circles. But this one just sits, like time stopped around him and forgot to start again. And the air smells faintly of bleach and damp steel. The kind of clean that never quite reaches the sadness beneath it. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, flickering just enough to make shadows shift across the kennel floor. And there he is, Rex, a full-grown German shepherd with a coat once meant to shine under sunlit drills and open fields, now dulled into quiet shades of dust and memory, his body still, his chest rising slow and steady like a clock that refuses to run faster no matter how many hours pass, his eyes open but distant, fixed somewhere beyond the chain-link gate, beyond the shelter walls, somewhere no one else can see. And people have tried. Families with soft voices and gentle hands, volunteers who kneel and whisper promises, trainers who bring treats and patience measured in long afternoons. But nothing reaches him, not the sound of footsteps, not the rattle of food bowls, not even the warmth of a hand hovering inches from his fur. He doesn't flinch, doesn't turn, doesn't acknowledge the world pressing in around him. And after a while people stop trying, because there is something heavier than fear in that kind of silence, something that feels almost sacred, like standing in a room where grief has settled so deep it becomes part of the walls. And the truth, though no one says it outright, hangs there all the same. This dog isn't broken, not in the way people understand broken. He is waiting, and waiting can look a lot like absence. When you don't know what you're looking for, outside the kennel a clipboard hangs with his file, pages filled with notes written in careful, clinical handwriting, dates, observations, attempts, all leading back to the same conclusion that no one can quite phrase: unresponsive, non-reactive, withdrawn. Words that circle the truth, but never touch it. Because how do you write down the moment something inside a living creature simply closes? How do you measure silence that deep? And yet today something shifts, so small it could be missed if you blink. The faintest change in the air as the front door opens and a man steps inside. Boots carrying the dust of miles walked without direction, shoulders squared out of habit more than purpose. His name is Ethan Cole, though no one here knows it yet. And he doesn't come looking for a dog, doesn't come searching for companionship or redemption or anything that sounds hopeful enough to belong in a place like this. He comes because sometimes a man runs out of places to avoid what's inside his own head, and the shelter is quiet enough to hold that kind of weight. His sleeve shifts as he signs the visitor log, just enough to reveal the edge of ink. Along his right forearm, a faded tattoo shaped like a German shepherd mid-stance, ears alert, gaze forward, a symbol worn down by time, but not forgotten. And he moves past the first row of kennels without slowing, past the barking, the whining, the hopeful eyes that track every step, until he reaches the end of the corridor where the noise fades into something softer, something almost like stillness. And there, behind the gate, Rex remains exactly as he has been for months, unmoving, untouched, unseen. Except today, for the first time in 187 days, something changes, not a bark, not a step, not even a full turn of the head, just the smallest twitch of an ear, so subtle it barely disturbs the air. But it's there, a crack in the silence, a whisper of motion where there has been none, and for a moment that stretches longer than it should, the dog's gaze shifts, not to the food bowl, not to the handler, not to the sound of keys or voices or anything the world has offered him before, but to the man walking past, as if something buried deep beneath memory and distance has stirred, something older than training, older than commands, something that does not need to be taught or explained. Something that simply knows. The sound of boots fades behind him, but something in the corridor does not return to normal. Not quite, because Rex is still looking, and that alone is enough to make the woman at the front desk pause mid-step, her clipboard pressed lightly against her chest, as if she has just felt a shift in pressure she cannot explain. She has worked here long enough to recognize patterns, to know which dogs bark at strangers, which ones hide, which ones wag their tails at the slightest kindness. But this is different. because Rex does not look at anyone, not even the ones who tried the longest, not even the ones who sat beside his kennel and read out loud just to fill the silence. And yet now his eyes follow a man who does not even know he is being watched. Ethan continues walking, unaware, his pace steady but heavy, like every step carries something unfinished. He stops near the far wall where a row of empty kennels sits waiting for stories that have not arrived yet. And for a moment he just stands there, hands resting at his sides, shoulders slightly lowered, as if the quiet has finally caught up to him. Behind him, the faint scrape of claws against concrete breaks the stillness, soft, hesitant, the kind of sound that feels more like a question than a movement. Rex has shifted, not fully, not enough for anyone to call it action, but enough that his weight leans forward, enough that the stillness he has worn like armor begins to loosen. The woman sets her clipboard down slowly, careful not to make a sound, because whatever is happening here feels fragile, like something that could disappear if named too quickly. Ethan exhales, a long breath he did not realize he was holding, and for a second his hand brushes against his right forearm, fingers grazing the faded outline of the tattoo there, the ink worn but still clear enough to hold its shape. A German shepherd in mid-stance, alert, loyal, unyielding. A memory etched into skin because some things are too heavy to carry. Only in the mind, and somewhere behind him Rex takes another step, small, measured, each movement deliberate as if he is testing the ground beneath him for the first time in months. The chain-link gate gives a faint rattle, barely audible, but it is enough to draw Ethan's attention. He turns slightly, not fully, just enough for his gaze to pass over the kennel without expectation, without hope. The way you look at something you have already decided not to reach for. And that is when it happens, not loud, not dramatic, just a moment so quiet it almost hides itself. Rex lifts his head completely, eyes no longer distant, no longer fixed on some place beyond reach, but here, now, focused, locked onto the man standing a few feet away. And in that gaze there is no confusion, no fear, only recognition that has no clear beginning. The kind that does not need explanation. Ethan stills, something in his chest tightening in a way he cannot name. Because he has felt this before, not in this place, not in this moment, but somewhere else, somewhere louder, somewhere filled with dust and distance and the weight of decisions that never quite leave you. He does not move. Closer, does not speak, because instinct tells him this is not a moment to interrupt. This is something unfolding on its own terms. The air between them stretches, filled with a silence that feels different now, no longer empty, but waiting, and Rex takes another step, then another, until he stands at the edge of the gate, close enough that the details of his face come into focus, the faint lines around his eyes, the way his ears angle forward just slightly, the subtle tremor in his breath as if something long buried is trying to find its way back to the surface. Ethan's hand lowers slowly to his side, fingers relaxed, palm open without intention, and for a heartbeat nothing happens, just two figures standing on opposite sides of a barrier neither of them fully understands. Then Rex leans forward, pressing his nose lightly against the metal, not pushing, not forcing, just resting there as if measuring distance, as if confirming something only he can sense, and Ethan feels it then. Not as a thought, not as a memory, but as a pull, quiet and steady. The kind that does not demand but does not fade either. He steps closer, just one step, careful, deliberate, and the space between them narrows until there is only the gate, only the faint hum of the lights above, only the sound of two steady breaths finding the same rhythm. And in that moment the woman by the desk forgets to breathe entirely, because she knows, without needing to write it down, without needing to say it out loud, that something has just begun that no one here has ever seen before. Something that was never about training or commands or second chances. Something that has been waiting longer than any of them realized, something that does not belong to the shelter at all, but followed them both here, quietly, patiently, until finally, they stood close enough to recognize it. The gate does not open right away, and maybe that is why the moment holds, stretched thin between hesitation and something deeper, because no one here wants to rush what they do not understand. The woman at the desk finally takes a careful step forward, her shoes barely making a sound against the polished floor, and her voice when it comes is soft, almost reverent, as if speaking too loudly might break whatever fragile thread has formed between the man and the dog. His name is Rex, she says. Not as an introduction, but as a quiet offering, and Ethan nods once, eyes still on the animal in front of him, the name settling somewhere inside him like a familiar echo. Rex does not move away, does not retreat as he has done so many times before when anyone lingered too close. Instead, he remains at the gate, breath slow, eyes steady, watching Ethan with a focus that feels less like curiosity and more like recognition trying to surface. The woman reaches for the latch but pauses, her hand hovering just inches away. He has not let anyone near him, she adds, not as a warning, but as a truth that is held for months. And Ethan finally speaks, his voice low, steady, carrying the weight of someone who has learned to measure words carefully. I am not going to force him, he says, and there is something in that sentence that shifts the air again, because it is not a command, not a request, just a promise, simple and unspoken beyond the words themselves. The latch clicks open with a soft metallic sound, the gate swings inward a few inches, enough to remove the barrier but not enough to close the distance entirely. And for a moment no one moves, not the woman, not Ethan, not even Rex. The silence returns, but it is no longer empty. It hums with something quiet and alive. Ethan steps inside slowly, one foot then the other, careful, deliberate, his posture relaxed but attentive, like a man stepping into a place that demands respect rather than control. Rex watches every movement, ears slightly forward, body still but no longer frozen. There is a tension there, but it is not fear. It is something closer to uncertainty, as if he is remembering a language he has not spoken in a long time. Ethan stops a few feet away, close enough to see the fine details of the dog's face, the subtle lines that speak of time and endurance, the faint scar along his muzzle that catches the light just enough to tell a story without words and without thinking. Ethan lowers himself slowly to one knee, bringing himself closer to Rex's level, not reaching, not calling, just being there, present, steady, the way you sit beside something that deserves space. His right hand rests loosely against his leg, the sleeve pulled back just enough for the tattoo to show fully now. The image of the German shepherd worn but unmistakable, and Rex's gaze shifts, not to Ethan's eyes, not to his face, but to that mark, drawn as if by something deeper than sight. His breath changes, just slightly, a faint intake that carries something like recognition buried beneath layers of silence. The woman at the desk does not move, does not speak, because she knows this is no longer her moment. This is something unfolding between two beings who are not relying on words. Ethan's fingers twitch once, instinct more than intention, but he does not reach out. Not yet. He waits, because waiting is something he understands, something he has learned in places where time stretches and seconds matter in ways no one can explain to those who have never been there. Rex takes a step forward, slow, careful, each movement measured as if he is crossing a distance far greater than the few feet between them. His nose lifts slightly, testing the air, and then he is close enough that the space between them feels charged, like the moment before something breaks or heals. Ethan exhales softly, his voice barely above a whisper now. Hey, buddy, he says, not as a command, not even as a greeting, just a presence. And Rex does not flinch, does not turn away. Instead, he leans forward, just enough for his nose to hover inches from Ethan's hand, the tattoo there catching the dim light. And for a long second, nothing happens. The world seems to hold its breath. And then Rex moves, a single, deliberate motion, closing that final inch, his nose brushing lightly against the inked outline of the dog on Ethan's arm. Not a push, not a nudge, just contact, soft, intentional. And something shifts in that touch, something neither of them can name, but both of them feel. Ethan's hand remains still, but his fingers relax, his shoulders ease, and for the first time since he walked into the shelter, the weight he carries seems to loosen, just slightly, as if something he has been holding on to has finally been acknowledged. And Rex does not pull away. He lingers there, nose resting against the tattoo, breath warm, steady, as if confirming what he already knows. As if this is not the beginning of something new, but the continuation of something that never truly ended. The contact lingers longer than it should, or maybe not long enough, because something in that quiet exchange feels like time folding in on itself, and Ethan does not pull away, does not rush to turn the moment into something louder, something easier to understand. He just stays there, hands steady, breath slow, letting the weight of that simple touch settle into place. Rex's nose remains pressed lightly against the tattoo, as if reading it, as if tracing something invisible beneath the ink. And then, almost imperceptibly, the dog exhales, a soft release of air that carries with it a shift, small but undeniable. His body relaxes by a fraction, shoulders lowering, the rigid stillness that defined him for months beginning to loosen like ice, giving way under warmth. Ethan feels it without needing to see it. The way a change in another living being can ripple outward, subtle but real, and his fingers move, just slightly, not reaching, not grasping, just turning enough for his palm to face upward, an offering without demand. And Rex watches that movement, eyes focused, alert but calm, as if weighing something deeper than instinct, something learned long ago and buried beneath silence. The woman at the desk takes another step closer now, careful, quiet, her breath held in a way she has not realized, because she has seen dogs come and go, seen moments of hope rise and fall, but never like this, never something so still yet so full. Ethan's voice comes again, softer now, almost a murmur carried more by breath than sound. "You remember, do not you?" he says, not as a question that expects an answer, but as a thought spoken aloud, and Rex shifts again, this time more clearly, his head tilting just slightly, the movement small but full of meaning, as if that single sentence has reached somewhere deeper than anything before it. Ethan's eyes narrow just a fraction, not in suspicion, but in recognition of his own, because there are things he does not talk about, things that do not fit easily into words, places and moments that live in fragments, in flashes of sound and scent and feeling, and now, standing here, those fragments stir, not painfully, not sharply, but like something being called back gently from a distance. He swallows once, steadying himself, and for the first time since stepping inside the kennel, he lets his hand rise, slow, deliberate, giving Rex time to pull away if he chooses. But the dog does not retreat, does not tense. Instead, he leans forward, just enough for Ethan's fingers to brush against the fur along his muzzle, the contact light, almost uncertain, but real, and Rex closes his eyes, not fully, just a soft narrowing that speaks of acceptance, of something long denied finally being allowed. The air shifts again, warmer now, quieter in a different way, not empty but full, as if the space itself has been waiting for this exact moment. Ethan's hand moves again, this time resting gently against the side of Rex's face, fingers sinking slightly into the coarse, familiar texture of his coat, and something inside him steadies. Something that has been unsettled for longer than he has admitted. The woman exhales finally, a breath she did not know she was holding, and she glances down at the clipboard resting against her side, at the notes written in careful lines that now feel incomplete, because there is no box to check for this, no category for what is happening here. She steps closer to the open gate, her voice low, respectful. "We never knew where he came from," she says, not to interrupt, but to offer what little she can. No tags, no records, just dropped off one morning. Ethan listens, but his eyes do not leave Rex, his hand still resting against the dog's face, thumb brushing lightly along the line of his cheek, a motion that feels both new and deeply familiar. "He had to come from somewhere," Ethan replies quietly, and there is something in his tone now, something firmer, not certain, but searching, as if a piece of a larger picture has just come into view. Rex opens his eyes fully now, gaze steady, locked onto Ethan with a clarity that was not there before, and in that gaze there is no confusion, no hesitation, only a quiet understanding that does not need to be explained. Ethan shifts slightly on one knee, his other hand resting against his thigh, and he lets out a slow breath, the kind that carries both weight and release. "I think I knew someone," he says, the words coming carefully, measured. "Someone who had a dog like you." The sentence hangs there, incomplete but heavy, and Rex's ears move, just slightly, a flicker of response that feels almost like recognition. The woman watches closely now, her eyes moving between them, trying to piece together something that exists just beyond her reach. Ethan's hand stills for a moment, resting fully now against Rex's fur, and then, With a quiet certainty that surprises even him, he adds, same stance, same eyes, and Rex does not move away, does not break the contact. Instead, he leans into it, just a fraction more, enough to close whatever distance remains between memory and presence. And in that small, quiet shift, something becomes undeniable, something neither of them can fully name yet, but both of them feel settling into place, as if a story long paused has just begun to move again, not forward, but back towards something that was never truly lost. The silence settles differently now, no longer something heavy pressing down, but something shared, like two breaths finding the same rhythm without trying. And Ethan does not rush to speak again, because he understands this kind of quiet, the kind that carries more truth than words ever could. His hand remains against Rex's face, steady, grounded, and the dog leans into it with a trust that feels both new and impossibly old, as if it has been waiting beneath the surface all along. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights above seems softer now, or maybe it is just that neither of them notices it anymore. The world beyond the kennel fading into something distant and unimportant. The woman at the desk shifts her weight slightly, careful not to interrupt, her eyes fixed on the two figures in front of her, because what she is witnessing does not fit into the routine she has known. It is not training, not behavior correction, not even simple comfort. It is something else, something quieter and deeper. Ethan's thumb moves slowly along Rex's cheek, a small motion, almost absent-minded, but full of meaning, and Rex closes his eyes for a brief moment, not in withdrawal, but in acceptance, in a kind of peace that has not been seen in him since the day he arrived. And when his eyes open again, they do not drift away. They stay, locked onto Ethan with a clarity that feels like memory finding its place again. Ethan inhales slowly, the air filling his chest in a way that feels different, steadier, and he glances down at the tattoo on his arm, the worn image of the shepherd staring back at him, a symbol he has carried through years without fully understanding why it mattered so much until now. I used to know a dog, he says quietly, the words coming not as a story, but as a confession, something pulled from a place he rarely visits. Same eyes, same way of watching. His voice trails off, not because he has nothing more to say, but because some things do not need to be finished to be understood. Rex's ears shift again, a subtle movement, but enough to show that he is listening, not just hearing, but truly present in a way that has not been possible before. The woman takes another careful step closer, her voice soft, respectful. Do you think he remembers something? She asks, not expecting a clear answer, just trying to make sense of what she sees. Ethan does not look away from Rex when he replies. I think he never forgot, he says, and there is no doubt in his tone now, only a quiet certainty that surprises even him, because it feels less like a conclusion and more like something revealed, something that was always there waiting to be seen. Rex shifts his weight again, stepping closer, the distance between them now almost gone, and for the first time since anyone can remember, his tail moves, not a full wag, not even enough to call attention, just a small, uncertain motion, like a memory of joy returning cautiously, testing whether it is safe to stay. Ethan notices it, his expression softening in a way that has nothing to do with happiness and everything to do with recognition. You have been holding on, have not you? He murmurs, his voice barely above a whisper, and Rex leans forward again, pressing his head more firmly into Ethan's hand, the contact stronger now, more certain, as if answering without needing words. The woman exhales slowly, her eyes shining with something she does not try to hide, because in this moment, there is no need for professionalism, no need for distance, only the quiet understanding that something rare is unfolding right in front of her. Ethan shifts slightly, rising just enough to ease the strain on his knee, but he does not break contact, his hand moving to rest along the top of Rex's head, fingers threading gently through the thick fur, and Rex allows it, not just allows it, but leans into it, his body no longer rigid, no longer closed off, but open in a way that feels both fragile and strong at the same time. The air in the kennel feels warmer now, not because anything has changed in the room, but because something inside both of them has shifted, something that has been locked away for too long finally finding space to breathe. Ethan glances toward the open gate for a brief moment, then back at Rex, his decision forming not in words, but in the quiet certainty of the moment. "I am not leaving you here," he says softly, not as a declaration, not as a promise made for others to hear, but as something meant only for the dog in front of him. And Rex does not react with excitement, does not jump or bark or move suddenly. Instead, he stays exactly where he is, pressed close, steady, as if he has already known this, as if this was never a question to begin with. And in that stillness, in that simple, unwavering presence, the truth settles fully into place, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a quiet understanding that does not need to be spoken aloud. Some bonds are not formed in moments. They are carried across time, waiting patiently until two paths cross again. And when they do, there is no need to explain, no need to prove, only the quiet act of staying, of recognizing, of finally allowing what was lost to be found again without fear of it slipping away. The words settle into the air without echo, without resistance, as if they were always meant to be spoken in this exact place, at this exact moment. And Ethan does not repeat them, does not reinforce them with anything louder, because something in Rex's stillness tells him that it has already been understood. The dog does not react with excitement or sudden movement. Instead, he stays close, pressing gently into Ethan's side, as if anchoring himself to something real for the first time in a long while. And that quiet choice, that decision to stay without hesitation, carries more weight than any visible display ever could. The woman at the desk steps closer now, her voice soft but steady. "We can start the paperwork whenever you are ready," she says. But even as she speaks, she seems to understand that this moment is not about forms or signatures or procedures. It is about something unfolding in its own time. Ethan nods slightly, not taking his eyes off Rex, his hand still resting along the dog's head, fingers moving slowly through the fur in a rhythm that feels instinctive, almost remembered, as if his body knows this motion from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. "He is not going anywhere," Ethan says quietly, not as a request, but as a simple truth, and the woman gives a small nod in return, stepping back to give them space, because there are moments that do not belong to systems or rules, moments that ask only to be witnessed. Rex shifts again, his body now fully relaxed, the stiffness that once defined him replaced by something softer, something open. His tail moves once more, a little stronger this time, still uncertain but no longer hesitant, and Ethan notices a faint breath leaving him that almost resembles relief, as if a part of him that has been waiting just as long has finally been answered. He glances briefly toward the open doorway of the kennel, then back at Rex. "You ready to step out of here?" He murmurs, the words gentle, carrying no pressure, just an invitation, and for a second Rex does not move, not because he refuses, but because he is choosing, weighing something internal, something that has kept him rooted in place for months. And then, slowly, deliberately, he takes a step forward, crossing the threshold of the kennel without hesitation, without looking back, and that simple motion feels larger than it should, as if an invisible line has just been crossed. The air outside the kennel feels different, wider, filled with distant sounds that Rex has ignored for so long. But now he does not retreat, does not shut down. Instead, he stays close to Ethan's side, matching his presence, not as a follower, but as something more equal, more connected. Ethan stands fully now, his posture shifting slightly, shoulders squaring not out of habit, but out of something steadier, something grounded. His hand lowers naturally, resting against his side, and without being told, Rex moves with him, staying just within reach, just close enough that their connection does not need to be seen to be understood. The woman watches from a distance, her eyes soft, her expression unreadable but filled with something deeper. Then surprise, because she knows what she has just witnessed is not something that can be recreated, not something that can be trained or predicted. It is something that either happens or does not. And today, it has. Ethan pauses near the exit, the faint light from outside filtering through the glass doors, casting a softer glow across the floor. And for a moment he stands there, looking down at Rex, the dog looking back up at him with that same steady gaze. And in that shared silence, there is no uncertainty, no question left unspoken, only a quiet agreement that does not need words. Ethan's hand moves once more, resting briefly against Rex's neck, fingers pressing gently into the thick fur, grounding them both. "We will figure it out," he says under his breath, not promising anything specific, not offering a future he cannot guarantee, just acknowledging the path ahead. And Rex leans into that touch again, calm, certain, as if the uncertainty of the world beyond this moment does not matter as long as this connection remains. The door opens with a soft sound, and a breeze carries in from outside, fresh, carrying the scent of open space and distant movement. And for the first time in a long while, Rex lifts his head slightly, not in alertness, not in fear, but in awareness, taking in something new without retreating from it. Ethan steps forward, crossing into that light, and Rex follows without hesitation, not because he is being led, but because he has already chosen to go. And as they move together into the open, the distance they have traveled cannot be measured in steps or feet or time, because it is something deeper, something quieter, something that began long before this moment and will continue long after, a bond not formed here, but rediscovered, not built, but remembered, carried through silence, through waiting, through whatever space existed between them until finally, without force, without command, it found its way back to the surface, steady, unbreakable, and real. The sunlight outside is softer than expected, filtered through a thin layer of clouds that stretch across the sky like something unfinished, and Ethan pauses just beyond the shelter doors, not because he is unsure, but because the world feels different when you step back into it with something you did not have before. Rex stands beside him, close but not pressed in, his posture steady, alert in a quiet way that does not carry tension, just awareness. The breeze moves lightly through his coat, lifting the edges of fur that had long forgotten what open air feels like. And for a moment he lifts his head slightly, taking it in, not overwhelmed, not retreating, just present. And Ethan watches him carefully, not with concern, but with a kind of respect, as if he understands that this is not a simple step. This is a crossing, something deeper than distance. The parking lot stretches out in front of them, rows of cars under the muted light, the distant hum of traffic drifting in from a road a few hundred yards away. The world continuing as it always has. Unaware of what just changed, Ethan reaches into his pocket slowly, pulling out his keys, the faint metallic sound catching Rex's attention for a brief second, his ears shifting toward it, then back to Ethan, always returning, always anchored. And Ethan lets out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, not out of amusement, but out of something lighter, something that has not been there in a long time. "You are sticking close, huh?" he murmurs, and Rex does not move away, does not wander. He stays, not because he is unsure of where to go, but because he has already chosen where he belongs. Ethan starts walking toward his truck, an older model parked near the edge of the lot, its paint worn in places, its presence unremarkable, but solid, reliable. The kind of vehicle that has carried more miles than stories told. And Rex moves with him without needing guidance, matching his pace step for step, not lagging, not rushing ahead, just there, as if they have walked this path before, even if neither of them can fully place when the gravel under their feet crunches softly, each step measured, each movement simple but meaningful. And when they reach the truck, Ethan stops, resting a hand against the side of it, glancing down at Rex. "This is where we figure out the next part," he says quietly, not expecting an answer, just acknowledging the unknown ahead. Rex looks up at him, eyes steady, calm, and in that gaze there is no hesitation, no fear, only trust that does not need to be earned in this moment because it has already been given. Ethan opens the passenger side door slowly, the hinges creaking faintly, and steps back, giving Rex space, not calling him, not guiding him, just allowing the choice to be his. And for a brief second Rex remains still, looking at the open space, then back at Ethan, as if confirming something. And then he moves, stepping forward with quiet confidence, placing one paw onto the floorboard, then the other, climbing into the truck without struggle, without doubt, settling into the seat with a calm that feels natural, as if this too is something remembered. Ethan watches him for a moment, something unreadable passing through his expression, then nods once, closing the door gently, the sound soft, final in a way that does not feel like an ending, but like a beginning taking shape. He walks around to the driver's side, opens the door, and slides in, the seat familiar beneath him. The steering wheel worn where his hands have rested countless times. But today it feels different, not because anything has changed in the truck, but because he is not alone inside it anymore. He starts the engine, the low rumble filling the space, and Rex shifts slightly, adjusting to the vibration, but does not grow tense, does not pull away. Instead, he settles deeper, his body relaxing into the seat, eyes half-lidded but still aware, still present. Ethan rests his hands on the wheel for a moment without moving, his gaze forward but unfocused, as if he is standing at a crossroads that does not appear on any map. And then, quietly, almost to himself, he says, "I knew someone a long time ago." The words coming slower now, heavier. "He had a dog just like you." And Rex's ears flick once at the sound of his voice, not reacting to the words, but to the tone, the familiarity of it. Ethan exhales, a long, steady breath. "I could not bring him back," he continues, the sentence trailing just enough to leave space for what is not said, and for a moment the cab of the truck is filled with silence again, but it is not empty. It holds something shared, something understood without explanation. Rex shifts closer, just slightly, his shoulder brushing against Ethan's arm, the contact light, but deliberate, and Ethan stills, feeling it, acknowledging it without turning, without breaking the moment. His hand lifts from the wheel briefly, resting against Rex's back, fingers pressing gently into the fur, grounding himself in something real, something present, and outside the windshield the world waits, unchanged, stretching out in quiet lines of road and distance. But inside the truck, something has shifted in a way that cannot be measured, something that does not need to be named to be understood. And after a few seconds that feel longer than they are, Ethan puts the truck into drive, easing forward slowly, the tires rolling over gravel, carrying them away from the shelter, away from the place where silence once held them both in separate ways, and into something else, something uncertain but no longer empty, something shared, something that has already proven it can endure time, distance, and everything in between. Not because it is forced, not because it is planned, but because it simply exists, steady and unbroken, waiting only to be recognized when the moment finally arrives. The road stretches ahead in long, quiet lines, the kind that do not rush you but do not wait either, and Ethan drives without turning on the radio, without filling the space with anything unnecessary, because the silence inside the truck is no longer something to escape. It is something to sit with, something that carries weight in a different way now. The low hum of the engine becomes a steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat beneath everything else. And Rex remains in the passenger seat, body relaxed but aware, his head slightly lowered, eyes half open, watching the world pass by through the window, not with the distant emptiness he once carried, but with a quiet curiosity, as if each passing tree, each flicker of movement outside is something new being reintroduced slowly, carefully. Ethan glances toward him for just a second, not enough to break focus, just enough to confirm that he is still there, still real, and something in his chest settles a little deeper, a kind of grounding that does not come from certainty, but from presence, from knowing he is no longer carrying everything alone. The tires roll smoothly over the asphalt now, the gravel long behind them, the shelter fading into memory like a place that belonged to another version of both of them. And as the miles pass, something begins to surface in Ethan's mind, not sharply, not all at once, but in fragments, pieces of a past that had been pushed aside, not forgotten, just held at a distance. He tightens his grip on the wheel slightly, his thumb brushing along the worn edge where his hand has rested countless times before, and his voice comes again, low, almost uncertain. His name was Carter, he says, the words simple, but heavy with something unspoken. Rex's ears shift slightly at the sound, not reacting to the name itself, but to the change in tone, the subtle weight carried in it. Ethan exhales slowly, his gaze still forward, the road stretching out in front of him. He was the kind of man who did not talk much. He continues, the words coming more easily now, not because they are lighter, but because they have been waiting. But when he did, you listened. The faintest hint of a smile touches his expression, not one of joy, but of recognition, of remembering something steady and real. Rex shifts again, his body angling just slightly closer, not pressing in, just enough to be present, to acknowledge without interrupting. And Ethan notices, not with his eyes, but with something quieter, something that feels like understanding. He nods once, almost to himself, and he had. A dog, he says, the sentence slowing, the weight growing. A shepherd, just like you. The words hang there, and for a moment the truck feels smaller, not confined, but closer, as if the space between past and present has narrowed. Rex lifts his head a little higher now, his eyes more focused, more engaged, as if something within him is aligning with the story being told, not in clear images, not in memories that can be named, but in something deeper, something instinctive. Ethan swallows, his jaw tightening just slightly. They were never apart. He adds quietly, and the road curves gently ahead, the motion smooth, uninterrupted. Where one went, the other followed. His voice softens further, the edges of it worn but steady. Did not matter where. The truck passes a stretch of open field now, the grass moving in slow waves under the wind, the sky above stretching wide and pale, and for a moment everything feels suspended, as if the world itself is listening. Ethan's fingers tap lightly against the wheel, a habit more than a thought, and then he says it, not louder, not clearer, just more present. I was there the last time I saw them. The sentence lands differently, heavier, more grounded, and Rex's ears move again, his body still but attentive, as if something within him is reaching toward the sound of that truth. Ethan's breath catches slightly, not enough to break, just enough to remind him that this part still holds weight, still matters. He told me to take care of things if he ever could not. Ethan continues, the words slow, deliberate. But I did not know what that meant back then. His voice fades for a second, the silence filling in the spaces between what is said and what is not. Rex shifts closer again, this time his shoulder pressing lightly against Ethan's arm, the contact steady, grounding, and Ethan's hand leaves the wheel for just a moment, resting against Rex's back, fingers curling slightly into the fur as if anchoring himself there. I think I am starting to understand now, he says quietly, not as a conclusion, but as a realization unfolding in real time. The truck continues forward, the road stretching on, unbroken, and Rex settles again. His body relaxed but present, his breathing even, steady, as if the story being told does not disturb him, but connects him to something deeper, something already known in a way that does not need words. And as they drive on, the distance between memory and now continues to close, not all at once, not in a single moment, but piece by piece, step by step, until what once felt like something lost begins to feel like something found again, not by searching, not by forcing, but simply by being in the right place, at the right time, when the silence finally chose to speak. The road narrows as the miles pass, turning from wide open stretches into quieter lanes lined with tall trees that bend slightly. In the wind, their shadows flickering across the windshield like memories that come and go without warning, and Ethan slows the truck without thinking, his hands steady on the wheel, his breathing even but deeper now, as if something inside him has begun to settle into place, something that has been restless for longer than he has allowed himself to admit. Rex remains beside him, calm, present, his body no longer carrying the weight of waiting, his gaze moving between the passing world and the man at his side, always returning, always anchored. And as the truck turns onto a smaller road, gravel replacing pavement with a soft crunch beneath the tires, Ethan's expression shifts, not in tension, not in uncertainty, but in recognition, as if he has arrived somewhere he did not plan to go, but always knew he would. The trees open slightly ahead, revealing a quiet stretch of land, simple, untouched, the kind of place that does not demand attention but holds it all the same. And Ethan brings the truck to a slow stop, the engine idling for a moment before he turns it off, the sudden silence settling around them like something intentional, something waiting. Rex lifts his head, ears forward, not alarmed, just aware, taking in the stillness, the absence of noise, the way the air feels different here. And Ethan sits there for a few seconds, his hands resting loosely on the wheel, his eyes fixed ahead, not on anything specific, but on something internal, something that has finally reached the surface. He exhales slowly, the breath leaving him in a way that feels like release rather than fatigue. And then he opens the door, stepping out into the quiet, the ground beneath his boots firm, familiar in a way that does not need explanation. Rex follows without hesitation, moving beside him with that same steady presence, not questioning, not hesitating, just there. Ethan walks a few steps forward, stopping near a simple wooden marker set into the earth, weathered by time but still standing, still holding its place. And for a moment he says nothing, does nothing. He just stands there, shoulders squared but not tense, his gaze resting on the marker as if reading something that cannot be seen. Rex stands beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touch, his posture calm, respectful in a way that feels almost human, as if he understands the weight of this place without needing to be told. Ethan's hand lowers slowly, resting against Rex's neck, fingers pressing gently into the fur, grounding himself in the present while standing at the edge of something long past. "This is where I last saw him," Ethan says quietly, his voice steady, not breaking, not faltering, just honest, the words carried by the still air and absorbed into the silence around them. Rex does not move away, does not react with confusion or restlessness. Instead, he steps slightly closer, his body aligning with Ethan's, his presence firm, unwavering, as if answering in the only way he knows how. Ethan nods once, a small motion, almost to himself. "I thought I lost everything that day." He continues, the words slow, measured, "But I just did not understand what stayed behind." His hand moves slightly, fingers brushing along the side of Rex's face, the same motion that began in a place far removed from here. Now finding its meaning fully, Rex lifts his head, his eyes meeting Ethan's with that same quiet clarity, that same recognition that has followed them from the moment they first stood across the kennel gate. And in that gaze there is no confusion, no distance, only something whole, something complete. Ethan exhales. Again, softer this time, and for the first time since the words began, there is a hint of something lighter in his expression, not happiness, not relief, but peace, the kind that does not erase what came before, but allows it to settle without weight. "You stayed," he says, not as a question, not even as a realization, but as a simple truth finally spoken aloud, and Rex leans into him, just slightly, his head pressing against Ethan's arm, the contact steady, certain, and in that small, quiet moment, everything that needed to be said has already been understood. The wind moves gently through the trees, carrying the faint scent of earth and time, and Ethan stands there a little longer, not because he has to, but because he chooses to, because, for the first time in a long time, he is not standing alone. And when he finally turns back toward the truck, Rex moves with him without needing direction, without needing a call, just as he always has. And as they walk away from the marker, from the place that once held only loss, something remains behind, not forgotten, not erased, but transformed, no longer a weight to carry, but a quiet presence that walks beside them now, unseen but real, steady as breath. And as they climb back into the truck and the engine hums to life once more, the road ahead does not feel empty. It does not feel uncertain. It simply feels open, and sometimes that is all a man needs. Not answers, not certainty, just a path that no longer feels like it has to be walked alone. Because some bonds do not end when we lose sight of them. They wait, patient and unbroken, until the moment we are ready to recognize them again. And when we do, they do not demand anything. They simply stay.